Good morning. Y'all are fired up as usual. I always look forward to coming down to talk to Boys State. Girls State, too. You know, this organization is one of the most important that we have in the state of Mississippi. Many of the people who help you organize this event were members of Boys State, and a lot of them go on to be leaders in our state. You're learning a process that is very important. You wouldn't be here unless you are already sort of tops in your grades and in your schools for leadership. And this organization provides just a wonderful opportunity, and I'm so proud that we have it. I wouldn't miss for the world coming down to speak to you, because a lot of the issues that I deal with are things I think are of interest to you. A lot of what I do as Attorney General, issues with the internet, things like that, things that are changing is fun. It makes my job great. I was a district attorney for 8 years up here in North Mississippi. Oxford was of the 7 counties, was my central office. And, I tried a lot of cases, death penalty cases to, everything to chop shops. And I love being district attorney. And, when the trial was over and the bad guy went to jail and you hugged the victim's neck, there's probably no better reward. I never really intended to get into prosecution. My dad was a prosecutor when I was young. He was a county prosecutor, and back in those days, they were what an assistant district attorney is now. The DA just floated into town when it became time for a term of court, but the county attorney did all the work and took all the heat from it. And, my family experienced a lot of threats. Our home was burned in 1973, and some local thugs took credit for it. We never really knew whether it was, some accident or exactly what happened. But the last thing that I wanted to do was to end up in public service and in prosecution in particular. I thought I was going to be an oil and gas lawyer. I was going to make a ton of money, and that just didn't happen. The good Lord didn't have that in His plan. He opens doors and closes them for you. So don't just think in life right now that you know what you're going to do. The good Lord may have a different plan for you. You may go on to become a doctor, but you may not be the kind that you think you'll be. There's oftentimes changes in life, and mine is an example for me that I know that I'm supposed to be doing what I'm doing because I love being Attorney General. And some of the things that I do as Attorney General, we do the dry stuff that I could put you to sleep real quick talking about, like representing state agencies and writing opinions to all the county and city and state officials. Those are the things that a lawyer does to represent the state of Mississippi. We have about 134 lawyers, about 275 total employees. A lot of them are investigators. We do a lot of things in the state. We have a consumer protection division in our office who helps a lot of people, helps clarify a lot of problems out there and fixes problems without having to prosecute somebody in a lot of instances. There are a lot of other divisions in our office that help young people, victims of crime, that help people when they've been, a victim of a crime, or whether they've had a family member that was lost to a murder. Our office has a lot of outreach in a lot of areas, but the areas that I want to talk with you primarily about are probably those that interest you. And I'm going to step away from this. I didn't wear a tie today. It's more relaxed, I think, and you guys are relaxed, so I guess I should be able to do the same. And the lights are keeping me from being able to see your eyes and see your face. So if you go to sleep, then I'm going to call you out in what row that you're in on. No, I want to see what you're interested in, because I get a lot from this. Of speaking to you, because I usually use at least half of my time asking questions, letting you ask me questions, so I know what you're thinking, what you're dealing with, and what issues are important to you. And so we have a conversation, so it goes both ways. I learn from you, and hopefully you might learn a few things from me. As Attorney General, you are able to protect and help a lot more people on a broader basis. And one of the areas that I've found is the internet. It's wonderful. You can sit there on the smartphone and look up things that it would take hours back when I was a kid to go to the dictionary or the encyclopedia and go look up. You can do it immediately. It brings us so many good things. But unfortunately, it brings us some bad
bad aspects to it as well. And criminals have learned to use the internet. That's where they've gone. They can steal a lot more money by using a computer than they can having a gun and going and robbing, a bank like they did in the old days. So what we're seeing is a vast expansion of crime in the internet. And there's no federal agency, that polices the internet. Do you know that? There's no federal agency that polices the internet. It's fallen to attorneys general who have cybercrime divisions that are out there trying to best police it as best we can. I mean, the internet's the wild, wild west. Some of you are going to make millions in just some app that you'll come up with. One of you in this room will probably be able to do that. It's so simple. It's not a simple process to do it, but so many people are doing it this day and time, are developing apps and doing things on the internet that your future will be addressing that. But what we're seeing is everything from cyberbullying to intellectual property theft to hacking, all these areas, and I want to explore a little bit with you, the issue of cyberbullying. How many of you have had somebody bully you on the internet? Yeah, about 4 hands. You know what the statistics show? 97%, 97 to 99% of everyone will be bullied on the internet at some point on a social networking site. So I know there's a lot more of you who somebody said something bad about. You don't want to admit to being bullied because they didn't really push you into doing something. Every school, everybody here has had some bully on the school grounds. We had it when I was young and in school. There was always some smart aleck kid that, he probably wasn't treated very well by his father or his mother, and he had a chip on his shoulder. And girls do the same thing, trying to bully one another. But what we have seen is a phenomenon that only your generation has had to deal with. And what that is that the cowards can go after the most popular. The most popular, the quarterback, the most popular in school, the head cheerleader, the most beautiful, the most handsome. Those people in school, you as leaders, used to not really get picked on. It was the kids that didn't look like everybody else that got picked on, or the little kids. Well, now with the internet, what you're seeing is everybody. Nobody escapes the wrath of some coward on the internet who's going to run you down. And so, parents don't know what's going on with the internet. It's kind of a new deal. To most parents, most of your parents don't understand the social networking sites that you go on to and, what you're actually doing on there. It's like when drugs started coming in the 70s, parents caught on to it pretty quick. They figured out what marijuana smelled like. They were able to advise their kids of some of the problems of it, and we adapted pretty quick. But the problem is there's a lag between parents advising young people about issues on the internet and how to treat one another. So basically, it's you folks who are going to be the ones to decide what the public discourse is, how you treat one another on the internet, and you'll set those morals and you'll set those standards, and maybe even you get in the legislature or the Congress, and we have to pass some laws to address it in 20 years. I don't know. Hopefully we'll act right, but that's not always the case. And, particularly young girls are the ones that are really subject to cyberbullying. Studies on lab animals show that after a period of being bullied, it causes long-term psychological effects. And so girls are getting run down, their reputation's ruined, and some of them are contributing and causing it themselves. Some 15-year-old girl that wants to date you, or, you're 16, 17, 18 years old, hopefully not 18, but you're, somewhere close to her age. Now they'll snap a photograph of themselves and send it to you. Well, they may not be fully clothed. And I'm not going to ask for a show of hands of how many have you received those kind of pictures. And I'm not one to here to browbeat you and tell you, that I wouldn't have done the same thing. But what happens is you send those photographic images on to your buddies. And what the girl has done, she has committed a felony by taking a photograph of someone nude under the age of 18 and transmitted it with that phone. That's a felony punishable by 5-year minimum mandatory sentence in the penitentiary, 40 years max. That's the statute that we send perverts to the pen over for child pornography. It's the same statute. And when you transmit that image and you forward it, you have committed a felony. Every time you send it to a separate friend, it's a separate crime. It's bad stuff. But the problem is we can't prosecute our way out of it. We got to try to educate young people that that's not the appropriate thing to do. First, you got to educate young girls to think more of themselves, and then they're going to get you with something like that. That's not really something that's going to, increase your respect for some young lady, I suspect. You might become more infatuated for a short period of time, but as far as future respect for someone that you would want to have as a girlfriend, it's probably not somebody that you're going to respect because they don't respect themselves. So you're going to have to be the ones to try to set that. And so what we do in the Attorney General's office, we go out and do training at a lot of different schools. We have to train parents. We do parent-teacher training and try to educate people as to what we should expect on the internet and let you know that it is a crime, to transmit those kind of photographs. How many of you knew that? Any of you know that? It was a felony to transmit those kind of nude photographs of somebody on the age of 18? A good many of you do. Hopefully some people in from our office did the training, but that's important to try to prevent crime. As a prosecutor, for 25 years, I've learned that prevention of crime is the cheapest bang for our buck in government. It's a lot cheaper than locking somebody up in the pen and warehousing them for 25 years to try to prevent crime in the first place. So crime prevention is very important. And as far as the internet goes, education of young people is very important. There's a poster out that one of my assistants sent a file with me. Any of y'all seen this poster about Yik Yak? How many of you ever heard of Yik Yak? Come on, everybody's heard of Yik Yak. It's not that many, But it's this goofy, some kid in California has probably made millions off of this app. And what it is you go on there and people supposedly with only in 5 miles of where you're located are able to post about something. Well, it happened right here on this campus at Mississippi State to a student that I know. And she is a great person, but somebody didn't like her. They thought she'd snubbed them or something. And so they start putting on Yik Yak all this filth about her, saying she was not morally sound, things of that nature that you can imagine what they put on there. Well, there was no way for her to try to stop it because they're anonymous. And that's the deal that this Yik Yak puts out to people who are cowards. They think that they're anonymous, that they can post what they want to and nobody can figure out where they are because it's only within a 5-mile radius. Well, we can. I mean, if we get your computer at your house and you've got child pornography on it and you deleted it all, we can run a program and find all those images. Well, the same thing goes for this kind of Yik Yak. That's why we put these posters out to let people know that we can track you and we can find out who are doing these anonymous postings. And just because some software company that's fly-by-night, it'll be gone in 6 months. It'll be something else. I mean, that's the thing about with technology. It's constantly changing. And it makes my job interesting, but it also makes it challenging because our investigators have to learn quick what's the latest, challenge that we have to face out there. So, I want to warn you about some of those things. And I'm just telling you, we have learned after spending millions and millions of dollars of how to communicate with young people. Attorneys General filed suit. Mike Moore, my predecessor, was the leader in Mississippi in filing acts against the tobacco companies. And we made them pay because we as government taxpayers were having to pay for people who were poor and on Medicaid, and they were smoking, they were getting cancer, and we were having to pay for all that treatment. So we filed a suit and said, wait a minute, tobacco companies, you owe us not just taxes, but you owe us for that cost that's directly attributable to you. So they paid hundreds of millions of dollars. At one point, Mississippi was taking about $200 million a year from the tobacco companies. Now it's down around a little less than $100 million. Still a tremendous amount of money that tobacco companies owed us. So with all that money, they spent millions of dollars, the attorneys general did, to study how we communicate with young people, how you get the message to young people that they will listen to. And out of that study, we found that young people talking to young people was the best way to communicate. A gray-haired 52-year-old prosecutor like me talking down to you and saying, we're going to put your tail in jail if you send this picture, if we do, you do this, you do that. It's like water on a duck's back. It runs off. But what we have found is that by young people communicating to young people, that you listen. You listen to your colleagues if they say, you know, if one of them says, wait a minute, this isn't right to be running this kid down when it's not true. You know, standing up for somebody. They listen to you. You listen to each other much more so than you do some teacher or some other figure. Now, you listen to teachers, don't get me wrong, but that's what our studies have shown. And so as part of tobacco cessation efforts, a lot less people are smoking because if you remember the ads several years, well, you were young, but a lot of the ads were young people saying don't smoke, and it changed your perspective. When I used to go into a restaurant, everybody in there would be smoking. It just, you know, Steve, you remember going in, you know, we expected to smoke is almost. And now if you go into a restaurant, it'll shock you if you smell smoke there. And so, you know, and I go to foreign countries and I still, you know, see that where people, in Turkey, for instance, I was there about 3 weeks ago. People still smoke in restaurants. But that's changed how we thought about it. And the way that we changed that was by you young people, changing your attitudes. And we're hoping that you'll do the same thing on issues like cyberbullying. You know, I had a press conference with young people. I suppose it was the first one that any statewide official had ever had, only with journalists in high school and college. There weren't any journalists from any other, you know, source. And what we were trying to do was try to talk to young people that were thinking about getting in journalism, that had a journalism class at their high school or at their college. And we encouraged them to do PSAs, public service announcements, where a young person actually just records. You can do it on the phone, you know, and post it on the school website about cyberbullying, about what the effects are, run others down, about, you know, issues like sexting, you know, sending images of people under the age of 18 without proper clothing. Those kind of things are what we're hoping that you will do, that your leaders in your schools, that you will engage and that you will, you know, try to work to prevent. So let me switch gears now to another area that probably is of interest to you. It's called intellectual property theft. And your eyes are glassing over. What's this guy talking about, intellectual property theft? I'm talking about stealing people's music, movie, software, or Louis Vuitton bags. Stealing people's thought process. How many of you have ever downloaded music for free off the internet? Oh, come on. There's more than that. All right. So when this is over with, I want all of y'all that raise your hands to line up down at the front, because we're going to go back to Jackson. You have committed a crime. Did you know that? Did you know it was a crime to download music for free over the internet? Now, if some musician has their website and they go free download, it's theirs. They can give you permission to download it for free. So there are some exceptions. But there used to be these websites that they provided free music. And you would go on there and they would advertise to you and they would give you somebody's free music. Now, Mississippi has an inordinate amount of some of the world's best writers, musicians, actors, you know, the blues artists. But usually the people that sing that music aren't necessarily the ones who wrote it. So if it's some poor person in a predicament, you know, singing a country song or a blues song, talking about being in jail, you know, or about her, you know, his wife left you or whatever it is, then that's often somebody that's in dire straits that has been in jail or something, and they write that music. And the only way they get paid, the musicians have concerts, so they get money from that method. But the writers, the little people, the people who actually have the creative talent, they don't get paid unless our copyright laws are followed. You know, and I speak to groups like the math and science students over at the W in Columbus, that way. Some of the smartest technical people in the state, and I've spoken to them, and I've told them that, and they wanted to write, man. You know, they're technology-savvy kids, and they think, wait a minute, my daughter wanted to argue me down about it. She's 18 now, but, you know, she said, well, like, Dad, we're just sharing the music. We're not actually selling it for profit, which is a good, logical argument. But it's still, those are protected. So I encourage you, if you're downloading music, go to iTunes or one of the major, systems where you can actually pay something, 99 cents or something, you know, where you're actually paying something. So you actually contribute to those artists who actually do it. Who actually write the music, who do the movies, who have the thought process to come up with patents on, you know, different clothing items or other things. That's important to our economy. It's billions of dollars a year that our nation loses. The Chinese are stealing our technology at an alarming rate. If you think about it, United States, we don't export and build a lot of things anymore. You know, our greatest export is our brain power, our technology, what we come up with that's innovative that other countries want to copy. And if we don't protect that intellectual property, then our country could easily, you know, go the way of Rome, the Roman Empire, which is great and huge for hundreds of years. You just think about it. America, you know, is the greatest country that we've ever had on earth, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we will continue if we don't protect our intellectual property. How many of you ever heard of the Soviet Union? You know, the Soviet Union, it fell right before ours. It was the second most powerful country in the nation, in the world. And it just fell apart right before our eyes in the 90s. Now it's Russia, but the Soviet Union was so many other countries. You're hearing about the Ukraine now, hearing about the battle in Ukraine and the issues of whether or not Russia's going to take that back over. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean, I mean, our country, you know, we have to have our technology protected, and so that's something else that your generation will have to decide. Do we continue to try to protect that technology out in the future? Another technology area that I'll talk about, and then I'm probably going to just stop and let you ask questions, because that'll lead us off into, you know, a lot of other areas that are more interested to you, you know, that are more interesting to you. And that is hacking. And what we're going to see in the future is a lot more of the hacking into computer systems, stealing technology, stealing our credit cards, stealing money, stealing technology. You'll see a lot more hackers out there. And, you know, technology used to, there'd just be a few that might have a PhD or at least a master's, and they're really brilliant people that work at universities and were capable of hacking in systems. And now, you know, governments are sponsoring. You know, China, we just indicted 5 Chinese soldiers who were basically just set up in a 12th-story building to steal our technology from our American companies, GE and some of those corporations. I mean, it'll be a big thing in the future. One example of what will expedite some of this will be, how many of you ever heard of 3D printing? Yeah, see, I could ask a group of adults, and there wouldn't be 3 hands this size that's heard of, and it'd be somebody in manufacturing that understands it. But 3D printing, a 3D printer, for those of you who hadn't, you know, or maybe forgot what you've read about it, there's one on this campus somewhere. You know, they sell them for $2,500 now, up to 50, 60, 100,000, whatever. But what we're seeing in technology and the changes is that you can print like a plastic part, you know, for a van or a car or something. Because what it does, it laminates, it melts plastic, and it keeps putting, you know, laminating over layers, and it'll make a whole part for something of plastic now. What we'll see in 5, probably closer to 10 years, we'll see that same printer be able to melt metal and laminate it along in with plastic. We'll see, probably in 10 years, we'll see where you can pay online and you can print a cell phone right there on your printer in your house. You'll be able to, because it'll be able to weld that metal and make those things. It'll be like Star Trek. You know, you'll find a pair of tennis shoes that you like online, and it'll print them right there in your house. But you'll have to pay for that technology. You'll have to pay to buy those shoes still. But it'll send that software how to make that to your computer. Now, imagine what the impact of that's going to be on the world, on China, who's making all these goods now. If we're making them at home, we don't need them built in China. It's going to have a huge effect on labor and what happens in this country. It's going to have a huge effect on the theft of intellectual property. It's going to have a huge impact of being able to hack into computer systems. The hacking and the 3D printing will change the way we operate today. It'll probably be, I think, perhaps as effective in making change in our country as the internet itself has made, just in your lifetimes. And so there's a lot to think about out there in the future. There's a lot for us to do in technology and protecting our country. And I'm going to close with, encouraging you to think about working in public service to try to make a difference in how we approach these issues of technology and all the other issues that our country is dealing with. Many of you are probably thinking more about making a lot more money. As I said, that's what my goal was when I went to Ole Miss in 1980 to undergrad. And, a lot of you ought to consider public service, and that's what this organization is trying to do, is to get you to understand that what our government does and what actions our government takes are important to people like you, important to young people, and what kind of education you get, how we compete in the future with other countries like China and other countries around the world. But you ought to think seriously about public service because it is rewarding. When you get to help people, and my people in my office help people every day that I don't even know about. When people come up to me and say, people in your office helped me get this job, or they helped me do this internship, and I learned a lot there. And, people at this university helped me get on the right track where I got a good job. And it's just amazing what you can do to help others. And I think that's why God put us on earth, to help one another. It's not all about making money. Thank you. We need people who help others. So